as if you didn't need any more motivation to treat yourself like a free agent, I just wanted to share with you some articles, or a series of articles that I found that highlights the importance of taking ownership of your situation. And this is going to be a little bit of a wall of shame here, and is probably not something that is too eye-opening for most of us, but the reality is in your face. If you allow yourself to be complacent in your workplace and in your career, you could be on the receiving end of this, and this is what you're up against. So I want to take a look at a few different articles that I found related to COVID, and I wanted to show you the thought processes behind the major corporations. Now, this is not unique to Exxon. You're going to see it in a lot of different places, but this one specifically highlights why we have to take ownership in our careers. So back in, this was October of 2020, so end of October, November, Exxon announced that they were going to be firing 15% of their workers in order to keep their dividend. So 15% of you lost your job at Exxon just so they could keep shelling out their healthy dividend, even as they were losing money, losing market cap. And so you can kind of see this market cap going down versus at one point, apparently Exxon was, not too long ago, was the world's biggest company. And now through corporate bloat, or whatever you want to call it, they struggled last year with the COVID cutbacks, and announced that they were going to save that dividend though for their investors, at the expense of 15% of people losing their jobs in a work reduction in force. So that was a way to, if you look here, the actions to improve the company's long-term cost competitiveness. So that's essentially what you are to an employer, is a cost. And it's exactly what they're saying. That it ensures that the company manages through current unprecedented market conditions. We're in unprecedented market conditions, yet they cared about keeping their shareholders whole and paying out that healthy dividend. So you are considered to be a cost, and they had to cut your position because they needed to manage based on unprecedented market conditions. They couldn't set aside a dividend for a period or two, a quarter or two, just to keep people working in one of the most unprecedented market conditions that we've probably experienced in our lifetimes. No, in this case, Exxon decided that they wanted to reduce the workforce, and this equated to essentially 14,000 people, employees, contractors, who ended up getting cuts. And this is globally, but most of these, I believe this figure includes the US, Europe, and Australia, and then I think there's also some Canadian decreases. Some of the other major oil companies also had slashes in jobs. Looks like BP had 10,000, and Shell Dutch Oil had 9,000, Chevron had 6,000. But as far as the cost-cutting strategy, literally they say it right in this statement from the company, that these actions are to improve the long-term cost competitiveness. So let's flash forward a little bit to see what happened. In this case, Exxon pays down billions of debt thanks to soaring cash flow from all those freed up salaries. So when you don't have all those salaries from those 15,000 people that you just laid off, now you have all this money to pay down debt. So profitability now returns. So of course they're not going to hire back those people. They've gone on to other things, or in some cases might even still be looking for jobs as I record this. But essentially what they did was they took aggressive actions in order to save profitability and make sure that the almighty dividend still gets paid. So what we see here is the net income through June, September, and December. You can see is negative, then to positive again in March. So essentially those two or three months or two or three quarters, they could have essentially gotten people back to work, but again, they're worried all about their dividend at the end of the day, and people are just a cost to them. Now, as we go forward, I wonder how many of those people have actually been recalled, if any of them, and how many of those people are still struggling with unemployment based on this. Yet the shareholders, and I'm certain that the CEOs and the executives have gotten themselves some pretty nice bonuses for keeping the company afloat during a tough time. So let's flash forward to the most recent article, which just came out a few days ago, and that's actually why I wanted to share this. And I found it, and I thought to myself, This is exactly why, as a job seeker, you want to be treating yourself like a free agent, because this is the mentality that you're up against. The most recent one, this is June 22nd. As I record this is about a week ago that this was published. But this is essentially says that Exxon is to fire up to 10% of white-collar workers over the next 3 to 5 years. And the key term here is to fire. It's not to lay off. It's not to reduce the workforce. It's the key term here is to fire. And what they're looking for is to continue to be cost competitive again for that dividend. Now, if you read into the words here and you look at this third paragraph, it says that the novel spin in mass layoffs, the cuts will be targeting the lowest rated employees relative to their peers. So in other words, if you get a crappy performance appraisal and you're in the bottom 10% of the overall population in terms of performance, you can expect to be fired. This is not laid off. You are fired strictly because of your performance. And for that reason, they will not be characterizing these as layoffs. So while such workers are typically put on so-called performance plans, many are eventually expected to leave on their own, is what they're saying here. So if you're put on that PIP, essentially, they expect that you'll leave on your own, or that there's this churn in corporate America where they expect the bottom 5 to 10% to churn, and you're supposed to replace it with the top 10%. And in theory, that's what they say should happen. But now they're actually saying that they are going to push 10% of the workforce out based strictly on your performance appraisal. So if you're somebody that is sitting there with low performance, or has all of a sudden been moved into a performance improvement process and you've been there for a long time, you better start taking proactive measures, because this is how they're looking at you. They're looking at you from a strictly, it's a numbers game at this point, and your performance metric, the performance appraisal that you get at the end of the year, is exactly what you become a number in a spreadsheet. And if you're in the bottom 10%, there's a red line that goes across, and anybody below that is going to get the pink slip. And this is not a layoff. This is a termination. You're getting terminated for cause. So if you're somebody that has been high on the hog, been just kind of coasting, not taking ownership in your career, this kind of stuff is happening. You need to take proactive measures. You need to be working on your skills, making yourself irreplaceable. You need to be working on moving up in your own particular career vertical. If you're somebody that has stayed at a certain company, and the people who, I'm sure there's people at Exxon who are sitting here, have been there for 20 plus years and have kind of slipped into that low category, and they have no contingency plan. They have, if they get laid off, they are completely stuck. They have to start over again. Chances are they probably have some antiquated skill sets, because when you stay in a position for that long, you end up atrophying your career muscles. And then there's going to be people inevitably that are going to really struggle after they get the pink slip. So Exxon is telling you up front that they are firing 10% of their workforce over the next 3 to 5 years, firing their workforce, not laying off. So it just struck a chord, and it kind of reinforces everything that I've been talking about on this channel. That's what, with layoffs and with reduction in force, it is really you are looked at as a cost. And if you're not adding value to the bottom line of the business, they will look at you strictly as a cost, and it's a metrics, and it's a cold reality. It's a metrics driven environment. If you're not adding value and your performance rating is below a certain number, you are essentially looked at as a cost, and it is a business transaction. And so people get upset, they get riled. Totally understand that, but it's a cold hard. It's almost like you have to look at the corporate machine as a machine. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have empathy. It doesn't have emotions, and it's just steamrolling its way to profits for shareholders. That's what it's there for. It's kind of like a machine. And so you have to use that to your advantage if you're going to take your career seriously. So I think that this is as blunt a highlight of the importance of why you need to be acting like a free agent, because you will become a number if you become complacent. So hopefully this struck a chord with some of you. If you are working for Exxon and you want to leave a comment, if you're at the bottom tier of your performance, hopefully that's not the case, feel free to leave a comment below. But wanted to share this with you, that this is real stuff, and this is currently happening, guys. This isn't just COVID from last year. This is happening actively. Companies are reevaluating how they're approaching things, and right now we are on a hiring uptick in general. But I wonder, is it too far of a backlash the other way? The pendulum kind of swinging. Who knows? But Exxon is clearly taking matters to the next level, and they are proactively looking at low performers. So if you're a low performer, reevaluate what you're doing, start taking ownership, watch more of my channel, and put yourself into the driver's seat in your career.